Welcome to episode 6 of the White Whale Marketing Podcast. I'm Christopher Nascimento, and with me we have Haral today. So shout out Haral. We missed last week's episode just because end of summer, everyone's getting ready for moves, people switching things around. So we should be getting going consistently again. Just took a week off, but yeah, lots of things is taking place, right? It seems like we might as well just keep this going every week. But yeah. As always, the podcast is in collaboration with the Sport Marketeer. Essentially, every topic that we speak on is available in written and newsletter form, so it gets shipped right to your inbox. If you'd like to sign up, there's a link in the description just below. And yeah, with that, let's talk about this week's 3 topics in the newsletter. So the first one is Fanatics taking over. The second is the top 50 most marketable athletes. And the last one is we have to do it. Ronaldo coming home. It's something we have to talk about. So, Haral, take it away with yours first.
Well, yeah, Fanatics is taking over, and a lot of people might be wondering, what are they taking over now? Obviously, they've kind of captured the retail space for sports with their various licensing agreements, and a lot of the merchandise that we buy from our favorite teams and players is now all found on Fanatics. But over the last couple of months, Fanatics has actually started to partner with the NBA Players Association, the MLB Players Association, and the NFL Players Association to become their exclusive trading card partners. So it's a brand new space that Fanatics is now entering. And it's really interesting because the MLB was actually partnered with Topps now since 1952. So this is a very historic change. After, I believe, 2025 is when the Topps deal with the MLB ends. After that, the rights to those trading cards will go to Fanatics. And Panini, which is really big right now in the space of the NFL and the NBA, is obviously out. And now for the next deal, it's going to be Fanatics who are going to be producing these cards. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about there, Chris, but with the rise of sports cards and trading cards, especially now in the pandemic and the ballooning of value that a lot of these trading cards have as a hobby and as an investment for a lot of sports fans, Fanatics is literally like taking over a whole new part of the fan experience.
Yeah, and it's a huge deal, right? Where it's almost kind of like what is it called? What's the saying? Changing of the guard, right? As you say, right? We're talking about something historic, and now kind of going to this new, company that's basically taking over the world of sports, right? I know, obviously, we're in Canada, so NHL is like the big one, especially with those jerseys in the back here for Haral. But if you want to purchase, I think almost everything now in regards to merchandise for the NHL, it's all Fanatics, no? And they are taking over, so I'm not surprised about it, especially with the uprising again in trading cards. Maybe I got to go in the basement here and see what I can make a little bit of bank on. But it's pretty interesting just in regards to, is this a trend, right? Is trading cards actually here to stay? Was it a hobby that people picked up because of COVID and now they're just pushing it along, or is this something that's going to stay where these new generations want to collect, have the hype thing, right? Where you could see that maybe a couple of years ago with shoes everyone wanted to collect, say, hey, look what I have. Maybe people are going to start doing that with trading cards again. It's a little more affordable, but it's pretty interesting to think about. But just as you were saying all this, one of the things kind of really stood out to me was in regards to the partnership they're doing with a PA, right? With all these different PAs associations. And that's where I think it gets very, very, I don't know if fanatical is a word, but let's go with it. But you know what I mean? Where I think that's where the real opportunity comes in this deal, right? Because that's when it allows the league and those players to actually start taking this and running with it, right? Or maybe it's a custom card, or maybe it's a specific card, right? Where maybe the players are designing their own cards, right? Where they're actually kind of getting creative. It's not always just white with Haral going like this, right? Yeah. Where I think that's when it gets cool. What do you think?
I think, well, one of the things that I've read is that they're trying to launch a very next generation trading card experience and a new trading card line. And because Fanatics is stepping into the space where, they've never had an imprint on, if you're replacing Topps and you're replacing Panini, and obviously, the NHL still has Upper Deck, but obviously I don't see Fanatics after their $18 billion IPO stopping, and they're probably going to go after the NHL one as well.
Mhm.
Like you said, the creativity aspect, there is a lot Fanatics can do. Now, I know there's a lot of criticism there where a lot of people aren't big fans of Fanatics, and ever since Fanatics has taken over some of their merchandising of their favorite teams, they might not be the biggest fans of it. But
Mhm.
obviously, if people are not a huge fan of Fanatics as a brand or as a company, that provides even more pressure to Fanatics to make sure that this trading card venture is something completely different and
Mhm.
becomes like it says next generation. So it can't just be cards, it can't just be, cool pictures of players, it can't just be autographed cards. Like you said, players designing cards would be cool.
Mhm.
Whatever it is, whatever else they can do, maybe it starts to combine in with the NFT space if they want to continue investing into that. Because I know Topps now recently started an NFT
Mhm.
line to go with their trading cards. I tried getting a couple packs earlier, but I didn't end up getting any, and then I kind of just stopped that venture itself. But maybe with the success of NBA Top Shot, is Fanatics going to combine the trading card license that they have now and be able to take that into the NFT space and now create some real cool NFTs that might actually resonate with fans and be able to create a whole new digital trading card experience that NFTs were supposed to create like at the beginning of the pandemic when things were getting hyped. Obviously, it's been a year and there's still a lot of time for the space to grow. But I'm
Mhm.
interested to see what they do digitally because Fanatics has always been about digital growth and digital evolution. So it's time for trading cards to take that next step and become a digital or become more prominent in the digital space.
Yeah, no, it's for sure interesting, right? Where I think there was a drop off, right, in regards to NFTs, and it seems like it's kind of staying consistent or maybe kind of on the uptick again, right? So that's pretty interesting. Or even myself, right, where as you're saying this now, at Way Whale Marketing, we did, you know, NFTs in May, I believe. So that was pretty cool. The first, I guess technically we can't say it, but one of our athletes was the first in their league, and we can't say which one by name, but it's soccer.
It was
Um,
a giant. It was a giant deal.
yeah, yeah.
No pun
But
intended.
oh, good one. I didn't catch that right away. That's a good one. But no, it's pretty interesting, right? Because there's so many different things you can do now. Where I don't know if you saw those VFriends NFTs, right? Where there's so much you can actually provide, and that's something we're looking to do with our NFTs, right? Where we were gonna put it up for auction or sell it at X amount, have it capped off. But then we're not just going to provide you with, hey, now I have a digital trading card, right? But maybe also an experience, right? Or maybe you got to, speak with the athletes personally, or hey, you get a piece of their merchandise, right? And then, that's something I was thinking about earlier in regards to the player association and the possibilities that Fanatics does have is, if Fanatics gets in the NFT space and they can kind of provide additional offerings when you purchase an NFT, imagine what they can do with their infrastructure and merchandise or XYZ, right? Let's say Austin Matthews. That was the big one we were talking about when we were looking at it. Let's say he launches an NFT with, what is it, Fanatics. Let's say that's the route they go into. And he's like, you know what? I'm a stylish guy. I want to design my own clothing line, right? And they're like, yeah, let's do it. You buy, Austin Matthews shiny blue limited edition NFT on, in 2027, you get this hoodie that he worked on with OVO, right? Limited edition, you're the only people that get it. And they have the infrastructure to do it. And I think that's what also gets interesting when you're talking about the PAs earlier on. I think that's where those deals can get interesting as well, where obviously this is kind of getting off topic and just how my mind works. But if you look at YouTubers, right? They create these audiences like athletes, how we look at them, right? Each of these creators, influencers, whatever you want to call them, has an audience. And then you can then sell that audience. We see a lot of these YouTubers having their own merchandise line, right? What if Fanatics starts partnering with the PAs, as they are, but then starts providing merchandise lines for these athletes, right? Where then you can not only just buy an Austin Matthews jersey or, what's it called, jersey, right? T-shirt with the number, or those ugly hats they have where it says like 34 on it and it's not even stylish, it's just stock, right? But what if you actually, each athlete that's marquee actually gets in the design process and makes it interesting, and then maybe they parlay that into the NFT space as well. I think that's where that whole partnership kind of gets interesting, where I think it's much more than just trading cards for sure.
Yep, and I mean at a completely basic level, and to put a bow on it on my side,
Mm-hmm.
Fanatics is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, producer and creator of merchandise for sports leagues. So literally, if you wanted to, like the thing with NFTs and the biggest criticism of that is why would I buy something that's digital and not like, give me any physical tangible value? Well, there you go. Fanatics already, probably has a bunch of economies of scale when it comes to producing merchandise. So now if they create an NFT line with their trading card partnerships, then you can easily just, like for example, if you unpack like a very cool, let's just say Pascal Siakam jersey card, and it might be a digital jersey card, but it lets you win an actual Pascal Siakam jersey, and they already produce all this merchandise, so it shouldn't be too much for their bottom line. And maybe that's the next step, and maybe this is a huge step for the NFT world, where because in sports people love the experience, the physical aspect of being able to acquire items and have like memorabilia. If Fanatics is able to leverage their NFT space by connecting with their merchandise, maybe the sports fan becomes more receptive and dives into the NFT space more, and it just gives us another digital offering to interact and engage with our favorite athletes with.
No, I 100% agree. And just kind of wrapping up as you're saying, they do have access to all these different leagues or clubs and brands essentially is what it is, right? Where obviously the NHL and they will be partnering with all these PAs going forward. But look, even last week or not last week, the last podcast we have, we're talking about Messi, right? And we're talking about that shirt that we kind of worked on as well, where it said EC say White Whale Marketing, or on Fanatics it was Paris, and Fanatics is the one selling that shirt. They sold out, right? So obviously we'll kind of get into the whole rollout of Messi and what Fanatics was able to do with pushing that shirt and having it sell out when we talk about Ronaldo. But yeah, definitely interesting stuff going forward. And as this podcast is always about sports marketing, so let's kind of get into athletes now. So another topic, I should say, not the other, is an article, or not an article, what is it? Yeah, I'd say an article or a sheet that says a list. Sorry, that's what it is. A list of the sports world's 50 most marketable athletes. I saw this because Zoom provides the data for it. Love Zoom, shout out Amir. Amir's unreal. He's a founder there. And it's a very interesting list. Haral was the one that brought it to the attention of our group chat here. And yeah, so quickly just to go over it, I'll just kind of maybe outline what they define as marketability, right? Because if we just say who's the most marketable, people always spit out Ronaldo. That's not necessarily how they define it. So I'm just going to read it here. So it's word for word. The definition of marketability in this sense is based not just on how many followers they have and or likes an athlete may have, but the demographic makeup and consumer affinities of their audience as well. So really what it's taking into consideration is, hey, we're not thinking of who's the biggest athlete or who can we slap on a logo and the most people will see it, but who can actually drive things, right? And who has the audiences that these brands actually want. And I think that's where it kind of gets interesting. And then my real question is here, and I'll pop up the list so people can kind of get an idea of what it looks like and who's on it. Haral, I don't know if you remember the list off the top of your head here, but who is a name that kind of most surprised you, and then also least surprised you for their ranking within this list of the top 50 most marketable athletes?
What I love to see and what definitely surprised me was seeing, maybe it's just because it's an Olympic year, but Simone Biles being near the top of that list is very, very exciting as a sports fan to look at, simply because, as a North American sports fan, you look at the core four sports, right? You look at the main four sports leagues, and that's kind of it. But looking at the top three right there, you've got Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka, and you've got Ashlyn Harris there, who are female athletes. And, I think a lot of the criticisms or I guess a lot of the fake criticisms and I guess wrong criticisms that people have about women's sports in general is always just, oh, the reason why women's sports isn't popular is because no one wants to invest any money into it. Clearly, based on these lists and stuff, and based on the work and the research that Zoom is doing, which is obviously exceptional, top of the line, there is a lot of marketability of these female athletes. And if that is the case, we need to continue investing in women's sports. So I think the one thing I'll just say off the top of my head is that I love seeing the presence of female athletes at the top, because the one thing people have been asking for is numbers to back up the reason why we need to promote women's sports. And now the numbers are there. So there is no excuse for, any sort of, I guess, misogyny that comes to, trying to treat women's sports as inferior. Here are your numbers. Here are the marketability athletes. And it's time for regular professional athletes to start taking a page out of the books of Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka to increase their own marketability. Clearly, they're the new trendsetters.
For sure. And, just speaking on these top two here, right? We're in Canada, so I'm sure we don't even see all the ads that Americans may see, or Americans may see. But Simone Biles, if I'm not mistaken, was in like Tide. There's I think maybe Uber as well. Like there's a bunch of things that she's featured on, which is huge, right? Because these are huge brands, right? So it's very interesting, and I'm not very surprised, right? Because as we're saying here, how they define it, she may not have the largest following as maybe someone like Ronaldo, which we'll talk about later, but the audience she does have and the polls she probably has, and the affinities that these followers do hold, that's what kind of gets interesting, right? Because if you think of here, let's see, what's an example I can use here? Canelo, right? His fans, and if you look at a boxing match, who are the sponsors on the mat, right? You see Modelo's all the time. You see really lots of gambling, alcohol, cars, expensive watches. I think it's him or Mayweather that had like Hublot on their shorts, right? Those are kind of the audiences they're going for, right? Whereas Simone Biles, it's a much larger scheme, right? We're talking about Tide, Uber, things that most people do use, right? Where that's kind of where I very much see how they're much more marketable. And I'm sure if I get my mom on here, right, and she would say, "Hey, mom, which one do you notice here?" It'd be Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka, and Ronaldo, obviously, since we're Portuguese. But it doesn't surprise me whatsoever. A few names do here, right? As we kind of go on, the biggest surprise, obviously, there's maybe some I don't necessarily know off the top of my head because I can't follow every single sport as much as I try. But this 5 and 6 is at first glance it surprised me. Obviously, I don't have the numbers. That's something that Zoom has on their own. It does show a score, but I am still surprised that Dybala passes Ronaldo, even Messi, right? Where's Messi here? 12.
Yeah.
Right? Is that not shocking, right? Maybe it's the fan base he has, or even just his age. And that's another thing I wanted to get into in regards to the ages, right? Where everywhere, 30s, high 20s. Obviously, there's a low 20s here, but it's pretty interesting that the most marketable, maybe a little more established, these other than the top two.
For sure. And I think one of the reasons why there might be a lower score for someone like Ronaldo and Messi, even though they have the following that, like, they have a much more superior following than Dybala. I'm kind of looking at the numbers here and obviously looking at, like, the frequency of posts, the reach that these athletes get, the engagement, the fan demographic, and the fan attractiveness. I think looking at the engagement numbers, the engagements on Paulo Dybala, his score is at a 35, whereas Ronaldo and Messi are at 26 and 28 respectively. So clearly the post that Dybala is making, even though it's at a lower frequency and maybe obviously to a much more smaller fan base compared to these two athletes, there's a lot more engagement happening there. So obviously we haven't taken a look at what Dybala's been posting, whether it's him actually connecting with the fans, but clearly his fans are passionate and whoever's following him is in his comments. I don't know what the content of those comments might be, but clearly that's an athlete that people are engaging with more than Ronaldo and Messi, who obviously almost everyone in the world follows, even if you're not a huge sports fan, and we'll get to that later. But clearly a lot of people might not be engaging with Ronaldo and Messi as much. So that percentage-wise, I think Dybala is capturing a stronger percentage of his audience.
Absolutely. And that's something, we've even talked about just in regards to maybe even the athletes we work with to an extent, right? Where, hey, are they the biggest? No, we don't have Ronaldo, Messi, Simone Biles, etc. But they do have their micro influences. And that's something we were talking about before we kind of got on air here, where I was kind of doing a little deep dive into the, some of the leagues that we're interested in. And the numbers are just wild. Like, I'm looking at engagement for some of these, athletes that have smaller followings, and they're pulling 37%, or it's basically around 20-ish%, which is just unreal, right? Where I'm sure someone with Ronaldo, obviously, we'll get into it in a bit here, huge following. But when, I think it's Herbalife, does a sponsored post, does it really kind of have that much pull compared to when, like we're saying, the athletes we were talking about before we got on air here, how much pull they actually have with their micro influence? And maybe that's kind of one of the big reasons we're talking about there, where it is pretty interesting in itself. One thing that I'd like to touch on before we kind of move on, obviously there's a mix of, various sports here. So let's look top 20. Skateboarding, soccer, basketball, lots of tennis as well, motorsport, cricket. That's pretty cool to see there.
Yes,
And then
sir.
kind of the same sports you're talking about, boxing, soccer, and then gymnastics. Nothing really that you never, all kind of names that you've probably seen on SportsCenter, etc. But with the trends in 2020, obviously the rise of women's sport was one of the biggest trends in 2020. And obviously we're there for it. Hopefully we can kind of get in that space shortly. But the other one was esports, right? So top 20, there's no one there. And I'm curious why that is, right? And when that's going to change, right? Do you think it's going to be happening in short order here? And let's say they release this list next year. Do you think we're going to see an esports athlete in the top 20? Or do you think it's going to be more of a slow burn?
I think it comes down to how you define it, because the top esports stars are not the top streamers. And sometimes there's a strong divide between who falls into which category. And as a result of that, I think the biggest challenge for esports is to be able to connect the streaming side of things with the competitive side of esports, because people want to stay connected to their athletes and their favorite stars as much as possible. But as an esports star, you are training as much as athletes are in other physical sports. You're grinding, you're putting in hard hours to make sure that your reflexes, your accuracy, and every sort of skill that you need for your game is top of the line. And as a result, you can't be as much of an engaging, interactive streamer as someone else might be who's just a casual gamer. So trying to find a nice synergy and a blend between, maybe this is something that esports teams need to do a better job of, and create better streaming experiences where the athlete doesn't have to spend as much time putting in the work for streaming, and they can focus on their craft. They can focus on their craft while still curating content. Mm-hmm. The more we can finally create that space and figure out how, especially in North America, athletes who are the top esports stars can create content and connect with their audience, that's when we'll finally see those stars and these esports stars on this list. And the sooner we figure out just that secret sauce and how to create more content and engage with the audience, I don't see, with the sheer numbers that esports does, I don't have a good idea on numbers, because especially with the internet, anything can explode at any time. But I want to say we should see someone in the top 20, optimistically, 2027.
2027. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And, it would make sense, right? I've had conversations with people in esports, or even I've even talked to people in clubs and universities, right? Just trying to get an understanding of what this is, and not what this is, what this is to an extent, but where it's going and how to kind of get involved. And I think that's the big thing, right? We're talking between streamers and then actual esports athletes. And I'm sure once they kind of close the gap, then it'll kind of take it to the next level, where it's kind of similar to Pavel Barber, right? I don't know if you're into hockey. That's someone in Canada where he's pretty big on social media. He's doing all these different trick shots, and we saw what TikTok, I don't remember the guy's name, but he's flipping a stick around. They're then, transitioning where they kind of get more pulled than potentially NHL players. But once you kind of see that crossover, like you're saying, I think it'll be pretty big. There's no place to go but home, I guess, is where I should say to kick off this last one. Just came up with that off the top of the noggin. But here we go, right? So if you haven't heard, Ronaldo has come home. So that's the huge news. Obviously, we've been talking a lot over, I think, the last one or two podcasts in regards to Messi. And then this is something we couldn't skip either, right? So the post that you're seeing here, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, unless something's changed, like a Kardashian posted some type of post on the beach. I don't know. But at the moment, this is the most liked Instagram photo in history. Wild, right? Where obviously with Messi, we saw all these different things, and you saw videos, you saw drone shots coming to locker room, and they're kind of hinting at it. Man United, drop a graphic. How's it going? Here we are, 13 million plus likes. I quickly just ran some quick numbers that I could off the top of my head with these formulas that I may use from university still. It's roughly, that's about 30% engagement of their following, right? So that's crazy considering they have over 46 million followers, and this is now the most liked post. He's come home. And the article that we have in this week's the Sport Marketeer is in regards to, Ronaldo's homecoming. Will it be a boom or bust? And that's in regards to both on and off the pitch. So that's the question. Let's get into it, and we can obviously dive into it a bit more as we go along.
Before I say anything, just going to give a huge shout out to AJ, who's also a United fan. Obviously, he is super excited. He's also involved in his own training camp, so that man's on his own hustle.
Yeah.
But
He's playing right now as we speak, if I'm not mistaken.
There you go. But yeah, huge shout out. Obviously, me and AJ being United fans, we're super pumped to have our boy come back. Firstly, what a privilege it is for football fans to experience both the transfers of Messi and Ronaldo in the same transfer window. Just
wild,
sheer bunch of craziness. The internet broke twice, and clearly, one was better than the one, outdid the other in terms of the engagement and the likes, like you mentioned with Ronaldo. Boom or bust, obviously, it depends a lot on. I think it depends a lot on Ronaldo's, I guess, connection to the fans. I think obviously he's still a stupendous player, and Manchester United has a good team, and obviously Ronaldo's only going to make it better. But because he's coming back to a team that he started his career off with, compared to Messi, where he was just always on Barcelona, and now he's starting his brand new. I guess he's starting his brand fresh in PSG. Here, there's already an established community of Ronaldo fans, and obviously Ronaldo might have his haters as well in the Manchester United fandom because he left to Real Madrid. So will these fans accept him with open arms? Will the old fans now be able to love him as well? There's so many questions that can be asked about it. I think, though, it's definitely going to be a success and nothing but a success, simply because, like you said, it's a homecoming. And I think it's really hard to screw up a homecoming of one of the best players in a franchise's and a sports history, And so,
I agree, right? Where that's what you're talking about, right? Messi's going to a whole new league, whole different, audience demographic, potential brands he can work with. Where Ronaldo's essentially coming home, as we said, right? Like, these are fans that have followed him along, hopefully, unless they hated him, as you mentioned. But on that note, I think a lot has changed in 12 years, right? There wasn't Instagram, there wasn't Twitter, whatever. There wasn't a marketing opportunity that was once there. And I still think there's a huge passion for him in the fan base. I was watching videos today as we're talking about this podcast. And, United fans still have a Ronaldo chant that they sing. And obviously they're singing full force as he came home. But I think that's something where it's going to be different, right? Where I think when he was still with Man United way back, the world was different, right? You can kind of hide if you wanted to. Obviously, Ronaldo was an elite player, but it's not to the position he is now, right? Where now he's a legend, right? Where maybe before people were like, he's good, but he's not like we don't know if he's the man yet. But here it is, huge impact. One of the things that I wanted to touch on is obviously the jersey. Obviously, with Messi, we were touching on, the sales that they may have or they did have. I don't know if we got it to that point. But the biggest question here was the number 7, right? Is he going to get it back? That's what everyone was talking about. And I do think that went a long way, right? Because obviously his contract, I believe, is 2 years plus the option. But then if they didn't allow him to wear it this year, I think there would be a huge delay in people wanting to buy that jersey, right? Because Ronaldo is 7. Obviously when he was younger, he wore different numbers, but it's CR7, right? So I think that would have had an impact. And as my professor in university said in finance, how much and when? The price of $1. And that's going to impact Man United, especially coming out of, out of the pandemic, right? Where the dollars they get now for those jerseys are going to go a long way, whether it's in regard to, sponsorship opportunity they can actually get, or even just in regards to, putting a better team on the field. And we're talking about the ripple effect with Messi, right? The more sponsors come in, the more you can invest in the club, in the fans, etc., make it a better experience, and then kind of push a long way. So I do think there's so much to talk about, right? Where here, I guess, obviously there's so many different areas we can go. My biggest question, because we were talking about in our last podcast, let's compare the two rollouts, Messi versus Ronaldo. Off the top, which one did you prefer?
If I have to take away my bias of being a Manchester United fan, I think the answer is still Ronaldo, and just simply because it felt so seamless. Like you said, CR7 is back. It's a return of a legend. And like you said, the photo you just showed of Sir Alex Ferguson with Ronaldo,
Yep.
many Manchester United fans connect back to the glory days, and I guess the last great era of the Manchester United team before or of all time was the Sir Alex Ferguson era. And so being able to connect Ronaldo back to that era means there's just, it's one of those connections to the glory days, and there's that hype and anticipation that Ronaldo is going to bring that back. Whether it happens or not, that hype and anticipation is going to be there regardless. With PSG, you have like Neymar, Mbappe, who might leave, and Messi, which is obviously a three-headed giant that almost no one in Europe can surpass. But with United, it's just so fresh and so. It's one of those things where how you try to do a Throwback Thursday post, or you try to do some retro or throwback type of theme, and it's hard to do because it's hard to connect fans and generations. This one was just perfect. It couldn't have it couldn't have fallen into Manchester United's lap any better. And the reason why I also think this rollout's going to be better is, like you said, with the jersey sales. I personally think Ronaldo's jersey sales are going to surpass Messi's jersey sales in terms of the PSG 30 jersey versus the Ronaldo 7 at Manchester. And what an ROI that's going to be for Team Viewer, which is the new jersey or the new kit sponsor for United. It's just going to be an insane ROI for them. Obviously, no one would have seen this coming, and maybe United would have liked to price their sponsorship a bit higher if they knew Ronaldo was coming. But I think it's just a win on all fronts for the fan base, for the team, regardless of success, and for the sponsors involved as well. Whereas also the last note with PSG, if they lose and don't win at all, there is so much pressure and there's going to be a lot of backlash. With United, there's been obviously a lot of years of not being the best so far. And while people expect this to now take them to the top and become the best in England and obviously the best in Europe, if it doesn't happen, I think the consequences in PSG are much higher than the consequences in United if the team doesn't reach their pinnacle of being the best in the continent. And that's why I think Ronaldo's return is going to be more successful in terms of a brand from a brand perspective.
For sure, and just whereas what you're saying, in terms of those dollars and sponsorship, PSG's like maybe they had free transfers, but the salaries that they're spitting out huge. So they do need that success to take place, right? So they can then kind of push those sponsors even more forward. In regards to Ronaldo, look, I'll admit I'm Portuguese. I'm Ronaldo till I die, and I do agree in regards to jersey sales. I think Ronaldo would be better because most fans when they think of Messi, they're like Barcelona, right? Where this is kind of more similar to, let's say, Ray Bork or something, right? When they kind of went to go chase that cup. You remember him as a broom, but then you see him as a, avalanche raising the cup. Or I think Messi's kind of the same thing where you'll always really remember him as a Barcelona player where, people will get it because he'll look cool, but in reality, they really want that 10 Messi jersey. But in regards to Ronaldo, right, everyone, look, I have a jersey. It's like this big. Something like that. My Manchester United Ronaldo jersey from 15 years ago. I think when he first got to Manchester, because I'm a sporting fan from Portugal. But into regards to the actual rollout, you're saying unbiased, being completely unbiased for the Messi rollout. I think there was much more of a hype, right? Where, look, I think it was smoother where, Man United was just like, Ronaldo's home. How's it going, right? That's cool. I think that's a cool feel. That's a feel that we kind of do sometimes with white whale marketing. But when you kind of go through their Instagram, and that's kind of the issue I had. Obviously, they're doing a ton of posts, which is fine because they're capitalizing on this engagement they're having. But I'm not too big of a fan of the graphics or, these old posts are cool. But what I really wanted to see, and I don't know if they could have held off this long, but like this.
Yeah.
That would have been cool. You know what I mean? If you just put this picture, he's back, I think that would have blown up. If you just put a picture, or even the number 7. I know the number 7 thing was a big issue with the Premier League and the different rules that they have there, and they kind of did an exception. But if they were able to hold off on officially announcing this, and then just being able to release, where is it here? This one?
Yeah.
And then also the front-facing one. Hey, CR7's back. Screw the regulation you have in regards to the jersey number. CR7 period, it's here. Don't worry about it. I think that would have been cooler, right? Where we talked about this in the last podcast, that the cool thing about Messi, there's hype. We all knew what was happening, right? But look, I'm not a PSG fan, and I was watching every single video that they were releasing for hours, and I knew Messi was going there, right? But they never actually said it. I think that built much more hype where, hey, I was much more engaged, where they kind of went, here's a graphic, Ronaldo's here. I was like, okay, cool. And then after a few days, I saw people sharing, and I saw on the United feed, there he is in this jersey. But what I would have really wanted is that hype, right? You're kind of hinting at it, or then, hey, then you go ahead and show me it. That's what I wanted. And it's cool because there was like a Messi watch, right? We were talking about that on the last podcast. People are at the airport, people are, doing this, they're doing that. But then this one was kind of just a bomb drop. So it really depends on your interest level. But I think at the end of the day, like you said, this is the one that's going to take the cake in regards to, ROI for the club, right? In regards to looking at it from a sports marketing sense. I think this one coming home, EPL, right? That's on the league. You see all these huge players now trying to go there, even other clubs at the end of the transfer window, I believe, trying to, find players to kind of just compete with these different clubs now, because EPL is the best football, I'd say, at least in 2021. So pretty cool things. And maybe with White Whale Marketing, we kind of talked about this. We'll get those streams going. Obviously, I don't know if we'll be able to do it on the 11th, because I think that's his first match for United. Well, maybe we'll do like those streams where we can have us reacting on, a layout like this, where you have our faces here on the left. We'll have, we can't put the screen on, but we'll do something like that where you see us watching to the game, because I think that's gonna be a huge thing this season with Messi and Ronaldo, where people wanna, engage. It almost gives a sense of human connection, I guess you can say, right? So a bunch of things we're gonna be even able to do. You see us posting that, and they're not even our athletes, so. Yeah, pretty cool thing. Anything else that you'd like to touch on? Because it's some huge news.
I'd say regardless of how this goes, for us at White Whale Marketing and for any fan, both casual and diehard of football, enjoy it, embrace it. What a time. No matter how this goes, no matter where your loyalties lie or anything like that, it's just so exciting. There's so much buzz to talk about this stuff that that constant changing, being able to experience what kind of shock it was to see Messi and Ronaldo both leave teams you never would have expected at these times and stuff. We're really fortunate to be in the time period that we are as football fans.
Oh, even sports fans as a whole, right? We're literally seeing legends you probably won't see again for who knows how long, right? Ronaldo, Messi, Brady, LeBron. Am I missing a sport? I don't think baseball really has a crazy guy right now, but you know what I mean? Like this is history in the making, right? Where, how many times are we ever going to be in the position where we're talking about, these two absolute legends changing clubs, right? And we actually have the technology or the infrastructure, even the opportunities now to actually, capitalize on these transfers, right? Where maybe back in the day, they're like, hey, Gretzky went to LA. Obviously, there's a huge impact there, but we didn't actually get to see it, right? Where here we are, go back to the first post I showed you, boom. You want to know how big of an impact it is? It's the most liked picture ever on Instagram now. That's how much people care, and you can actually have, data to back it up, which I think is pretty cool. And I'm sure in, let's say 5 years, if we're still doing this White Whale Marketing podcast, and we go, hey, let's look back on it, compare numbers. I'm sure there's going to be different posts like this when maybe Messi or Ronaldo retire, or LeBron or Brady retires. There's going to be something there where it's going to have a huge ripple effect on, clubs, sponsors, even just social posts, which I think is going to be very, very cool. But yeah, is there anything else for all, or do you think that's it for this week's episode?
I think we've definitely we haven't exhausted this topic, and who knows, with we'll probably be comparing Messi's debut to Ronaldo's debut when those two things happen. You can't talk about Messi and Ronaldo enough, and who knows what's going to change in the world of sports between now and the next week. So I think it's best to leave it at this.
Yeah. I feel bad too, because I think we were going to talk about, you know what? I won't even say it. We'll get to those topics eventually. But yeah, lots to discuss. As always, thank you for watching. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the Sport Marketeer newsletter. It's a sports marketing articles that get sent to your email inbox every single week directly to you. It basically kind of outlines everything we said in more depth. So stay tuned for that. It ships out on Fridays. You can look at the link in the description, and there's a link straight to our Substack to subscribe to it. Other than that, thanks for watching. See you next Thursday. Haral and I are out.